Where can I go to get motivation, inspiration? Where can I go to, find ways to plan things? And so what are you doing to prepare? How are you working on becoming that agent that's the most prepared for an opportunity? I think you haven't failed unless you quit, right? That's really what true failure is like. Every other failure that you experience is just data. Ultimately, you have to get to this point where you have enough trust in yourself to know that even if it's not perfect, that you're going to figure out what to do next, and you're going to take that data and you're going to revamp, and the next time it's going to get better, and the next time it's going to get better. So it's progress over perfection. The more you take action, the more confident you're going to be.
You are listening to the #1 real estate podcast in the world. We talk with real estate professionals all across North America about their wins, losses, lessons, stories, help you win in your local market today. My name's Cody from Sheridan Street. I am joined with Vikram Deol of the Triz Method and of Sheridan Street. What's up, man? You're back in Medellin. I'm
Thank
still
God.
here stateside. I had a little bit of a fall, and you got to witness that fall at a sales con. So I'm booted up, strapped up, but on a ton of Advil and ibuprofen, and trying to do as well as I can. But that enough of me. How are you?
Me and you are so different. I would have to be like, I'd have to have like my legs severed to put a boot on. Right, you know me, man. I've had I just found out last week that I have I knew I had an ACL MCL tear in my left knee, but I also have a bulging disc, a pinched sciatic nerve, and I found out the reason why I have hip pain is because I have the hip of a 90-year-old, probably because of the ACL that I never went to physical therapy for. So yeah, we're just, I just don't have time for boots in my life. But we did get back from SalesCon last week, or I don't even know what day it is anymore. And I know I'd love to hear some of your takeaways that you brought up.
Yeah,
you brought home from that event.
I think it was cool because we got the opportunity to bring our sales team to this event, and for them, specifically one of our guys has been with us for a while. He's been to a lot of events with us, booth events, but he's never actually been to like a training event. So it was really cool to kind of see him be able to kind of like learn and like listen and take notes and really like apply himself. So that was really cool for me, watching our guys kind of like, get the coaching and the mentorship that's, got us to where we are today. I think that was really cool. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I had was what Dean said on one of the last days that we were there, because they ran another day. He said, he asked the question like, would you follow you? And I think that was a super, super powerful question around sales leadership is like, are you living a life worth somebody following you? And I think that so many real estate team leads, specifically the type of clients that, I do a lot of one-on-one consulting with, it's a powerful question for me, but it's a powerful question, I think, for anyone in the real estate industry. Even if you just have a virtual assistant, it's like, would you follow you? And I think that was for me, it was just a good reminder of like, okay, am I keeping my promises to myself? Am I living up to the standard that, would make me want to follow me? And I think that was probably one of the biggest key takeaways that I had. It's really, really simple. There's tons of other tactical things, but I think for me, that was probably the biggest, like, oh yeah, it was a good reminder more than anything of that, like, the boring and the mundane stuff create the best results. But how about you?
Yeah, man. I think if you take it a level step further, it's, are you the type of person that people should follow, right? Forget just in sales, but would you follow yourself, right? In every aspect, health, wealth, relationships, love, money, right? Leadership, skill building, business development, right? Like when you go into it and you really get deep into it, I'm all about the Wu-Tang, woo-woo stuff, as you know. You decided to go cripple on me and do the crip walk, right up to your bed. And I understand why, because your foot looked like a watermelon. So hopefully that heals quickly. But I think one of the talks that I really enjoyed was a guy named Brian something was his last name. And he talked about the consciousness around sales and energy, right? And what I loved about it is that, and I think we're going to dive deeper with our guest today. There's things that allow us to go from power to courage, when you're in an environment. And it doesn't matter if you're, playing sports or if you're leading a team or if you're in sales, but there's things that we can do that allow us to go from power to courage. And I think a lot of people try to power their way through things, which is why they're so burnt out, which is why they're so exhausted, why they're mentally drained. But when you can get to a place where you show up with courage because you do the right activities, your life fundamentally changes. And I think there's an important exercise, and we're going to get more into that in the podcast, so I don't want to ruin it. But I think one of the most important exercises that I love doing when we're live with our team, because some of you guys don't know this, but we operate on 3 continents and like 7 countries. So our team spans Canada, Oman, Argentina, Colombia, the United States. What am I missing? Is that it?
No,
5?
Yeah, I think it's 5.
Okay. So I'm a little brain fog. I've been sick for the last 2 weeks traveling. A little brain fog, but 3 continents, 5 countries. And, that's really challenging because we never actually see most of our people in real life. All we see is like from the, belly button up. And when we went to dinner, we did this really special dinner where everybody went around and said something that they appreciate about the other person. And then the last thing that we have to do is after everybody pours love into you is you have to say something that you love and appreciate about yourself. And every single one of us cried. Every single one of us shared, and every single one of us had magical moments because of that. So I think that's going to also tie into what we're talking about today. But yeah, man, super cool event. And you guys, if you're not out there doing live events, we have a live event in Fort Lauderdale, May 19th and 20th. We'll drop a link in the show notes. You should show up. First off, the tickets are incredibly cheap because we wanted to open up to everybody, but we're going to do mindfulness. We're going to do sales training. We're going to talk about the state of the market. We have 2 presidents of some of the largest brokerages in the country, EXP and Real. We're going to talk about PR, which is something that a lot of agents don't think about. We're going to talk about social media, and then we're going to obviously dive deep into what I love, which is skill building. But if you don't think that live events change lives, Cody and I wouldn't be here as friends if Sharon didn't show up to that event and I didn't show up to that event and Cody didn't show up to that event. So without further ado, we have a super cool guest. She's a senior vice president of Cross Country Mortgage. She is a badass. She has her own show, which she goes deep into wealth building and into, how to be successful. Super excited to chat with her because I think we're going to go into like more woo-woo stuff instead of like more of like the tactical things that every agent knows, but they don't understand kind of maybe the mindset, the physiology, the psychology, right? Like how you connect to source energy and stuff like that. Maybe that's all I'm going to talk about. We'll see what happens. But I wanted to welcome Nicole to our podcast. Nicole, what's up?
Thank you guys for having me. I'm loving listening to your experience at your sales training. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's the first step in the science of love. What we're going to talk about today, it's about preparation. And when you go to those sales training events and you do those activities, that's the preparation it takes to be able to find opportunity and then have the confidence to take bold action. And I love that term woo woo. I think that's like I hear Alex Hormozy say that a lot, and I am a little bit woo-woo because I think at the end of the day, like in order to do those tactical strategies and those things that you guys teach so well, you really need to have this like intrinsic belief and motivation and trust in yourself, right? That you can actually make the right decisions. You can get the results. And the hardest thing about the luck formula, as we like to call it, the science of luck, is that honestly, the only way it really works if it's consistently repeated, right? And so we have to be able to deal with rejection, and we have to be able to deal with failure, and then we have to be able to get back up and do all of this all over again. And so I'm really excited to talk to you and your listeners about this today. I work with realtors, as you guys know, 20 years in the mortgage industry. I think our jobs are parallel. Agents work so hard. My mom was a realtor when I was a kid. I think that's how I got into the mortgage industry, but she absolutely, and all the partners I work with, it's such an incredibly long sales cycle from the time you meet someone to the time you close a deal. And I have so much respect for agents, and I hope this is something that really helps them today.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into it because, I say I'm part of the Wu-Tang Clan and we ain't nothing to fuck with. And so let's talk about what you call the science of luck, right? Because I think there's a lot of words for it. and there's a lot of different things, but I think it comes down to a few fundamental components. So I'd love to hear kind of like where you start with how do people get lucky?
The concept of luck it's really very straightforward. At the end of the day, it's like some people notice opportunities and others don't. And I use this example of two women that walk into a coffee shop, one that sits down after she gets her coffee and just starts scrolling on her phone, and the other one that's like very aware of what's going on around her, drinking her coffee, and ends up striking an amazing conversation with a stranger because she's open and aware. And at the end of that discussion, she's offered an amazing job opportunity, and she gets to work for this incredible company, and she has this new opportunity. And so it could be just as simple as that. Creating more luck in your life, just being more open-minded, being more present, being more aware, and then taking action on the things that you're seeing. Because if you don't have the right mindset when you're going into something, you're not going to see the opportunity, right? I'm sure you guys teach this a lot when you're training. If you're going into a presentation with a listing, right, and you have this mindset like, oh, they're probably not going to choose me, or you didn't do enough preparation, or maybe you don't take enough bold action after, it's all for naught, right? So it starts with the luck formula. What's the equation, right? How do we create more luck in our life? How do we create environments where luck can thrive in our lives? And that's preparation plus opportunity plus action equals luck. It creates these places in your life where luck can thrive. And so, you got to get your head around failure too. And I'm sure you guys talk about this a lot in your sales training program, but that's a big component of all of this. And so really what we teach in the science of luck is that you control it. You control the luck in your life. And we've all heard the quick, quote pro saying like, hey, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That's true. That's like the short version of the science here, is that if you work hard and if you repeat this formula over and over again, the results will follow.
There's a couple things that I want to jump in first because I believe that lucky people prepare the most, right?
Yeah.
There's, when I was a platinum partner with Tony Robbins, Keith Cunningham, one of his buddies and speakers, said most entrepreneurs, right? There's a book that he has called The Road Less Stupid. You'd be less stupid if you read it. But what he says is that most entrepreneurs only look at the upside, they never look at the downside. And the problem with that is that if you only think that things are going to go well, right, which is what most entrepreneurs, most real estate people, most mortgage officers, whatever you call it, they're always preparing only for the good. Oh, well, I'm going to be great. Why? Because I have a great personality. I'm sorry, that's not going to cut it. Why are you going to be great? Well, I used to sell stuff before. I'm sorry, that's not going to cut it. Because in real estate, you're not just a salesperson. You're the marketing. You're the admin. You're the sign orderer. You're everything to everyone. You have to work with escrow. You got to work with lenders like you. You got to work with mortgage. You got to work with appraisers. You got to work with inspectors, right? You got to work with a listing agent, a buyer's agent, the clients. There's so many parties you serve.
Yep.
And most people get in and they're like, well, I'm just going to wing it. Is that how people prepare for success?
That's a great. I love everything you said. I'm a fellow firewalker too, not a platinum partner, but love Tony Robbins. And so, yeah, I think mindset's a big part of this whole game of selling. And I think practice is probably one of the most important parts of it all, right? And that's why I believe so much in sales training programs, because I think a lot of companies don't provide the sales training people need. And by the way, I think that goes doesn't matter if you're 1 year in business, 0 years in business, or 20 years in business. I think practicing sales, practicing how to ask the right questions, and all of those tactical strategies is something just like a professional athlete. They don't stop training when they become a pro, right? They train even harder at that point. And so that's how I look at it. And I think, when we think about preparation, it's like, well, what are you doing to try to understand your community more, to understand the programs and guidelines more? If you're in the mortgage industry, what are you doing every week, every day to kind of hone in on those skills? I just hired someone that worked for Grant Cardone for 2 years. And before that, we worked together at Wells Fargo. And so he's got the mortgage knowledge plus the sales knowledge now. And he said every morning at Grant Cardone's, they did a sales training every single morning. They practiced sales, they role played. I can't tell you how far away from that I was personally. So I always would look for that stuff outside of my company. Where can I go to get motivation, inspiration? Where can I go to, find ways to plan things? And so really, like, the message here is like, what are you doing to prepare? How are you working on becoming that agent that's the most prepared for an opportunity. I tell the story all the time about when I first applied for a managerial position in my prior organization. I didn't get the first time I applied. I didn't get the position. I didn't get the opportunity. And you know what? In hindsight, at the end of that failure, let's call it, I asked, why wasn't I the one that got the opportunity? And the reality is I just wasn't as prepared as the other person, right? I just
Right.
wasn't as prepared. But now it's up to me. Okay, like, do I take that failure to me as data, or do I take it as like something personal, right? Because I have to get back up and repeat the formula again. And so a year later, the opportunity came about. The job was there again, another position in the company, and I went for it again. And this time I was prepared, right? This time I did get the opportunity. I did take action when it came, but I was prepared for it. And so I think we can all think of times in our lives, right? Vikram and Cody, I think you could think of things right now where it's like, if you
Every
weren't
day.
prepared for that, that opportunity would have never come your way. And so it's the most important thing we can
Yeah,
do.
no, I totally agree. I think that, like we talk with our clients about this a lot about like preparation. Like, for us, like preparation looks like, do you have a good buyer presentation? Do you have a good listing presentation? Do you know how to set appointments and like in a market like today? And I think that one of the things about preparation and, and I would love to hear both your insights on this, because at the end of the day, I feel like people don't take action because they don't have necessarily the confidence. But there's like this loop that happens where it's like you get confidence through competence. So you prepare, like it's the loop. Like, the competence is created through the preparation. It's like, well, I feel confident about this because I did the work prior to, or I learned something new. But I would love to hear your guys' insight around like how do people maintain confidence? Because I feel like there's a lot of people in our industry, and this probably happens in the mortgage industry as well, but in the real estate industry, people lose confidence simply by like not keeping their promises to themselves. So, and I think a lot of this happens through like a lot of the internet gurus often say like, well, just 10x your goal, or just like, like if you want to do, like we hear this all the time from agents. They're like, well, if I could just get to 5 deals a month, my life would be significantly better. It's like, but they're not even doing one. So how do,
If they could get to one
yeah,
deal a month, their life would significantly change, because most of them are doing 4 to 6, maybe 8. And what they don't realize is that, sorry to cut you off, Cody, they don't realize that if you go from 6 to 12, it's 100% increase. But they think about numbers because they go to these events, they go to these conferences where everybody's like, yeah, you got to do 40 deals. And I'm like, what would 40 deals even equal for you income wise? They go, I don't know. I'm like, so how's that your goal? Like, I don't know. We just thought it would be cool to do a deal a week. I'm like, what do you need though to earn? Like, if we could just get to $100,000 a year, what's your average commission? 12,000. So if you did 40 deals, that would be like 500,000. They're like, really? I'm like, you guys aren't even prepared with like a basic number of what you're shooting for. So you don't even have a target. Anyway, sorry to cut you off.
That's to what I'm getting to. And I think that like subconsciously what happens is, agents come into our world, and this happens not just in real estate, this happens in every industry, but like they lose confidence through how do you guys think that agents should balance the aspirational and the realistic? Like what does that look like for you, Nicole?
Yeah, Cody, I think like at the end of the day, momentum beats perfection every time. And it's to your point, right? The confidence starts to build in that momentum and in that practice. And we can all think about that, the first listing presentation versus the 10th listing presentation, the first podcast versus the 100th podcast, right? That one of the things we have to be willing to do is just not be perfect. And I think we have this desire, many of us, and to like, well, I'm not going to do it until I know it's going to be perfect. And it just doesn't work like that. Ultimately, you have to get to this point where you have enough trust in yourself to know that even if it's not perfect, that you're going to figure out what to do next, and you're going to take that data and you're going to revamp. And the next time it's going to get better. And the next time it's going to get better. So it's progress over perfection. The more you take action, the more confident you're going to be. And so I think about this a lot with video too. Today there are so many agents and loan officers that like haven't gotten in the space of doing short form video. That's the way, whether we like it or not, That's the way. And I can tell you right now, I didn't like it at first. I recorded, just as an example, I recorded like 3 months of video before I even wanted to post one of them. I literally just left it on my phone and I kept looking at it. And there were things that I didn't like. And there were ways that I didn't like how I sound or how I looked. And, there's still things today I don't like. I know my videos aren't perfect. I know I don't look perfect. I know sometimes I don't sound perfect. I don't say the most perfect things, but I'm okay with that because nobody is. Nobody is perfect. You could be Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, and you're going to have critics. You're going to have people saying you're not doing it right or you don't look the best, whatever it may be. So I think it's got to start there. Everybody has to be okay with not being perfect. And I think that's where the confidence comes from when you realize we all start on that same playing field. And so the more you do it and the more that you embrace it, that cold call, that listing presentation, whatever it may be, the better you're going to get every time. So I mean, my practice makes progress. And the more that you do things, the better you're going to get. And it's don't search for perfection. I think the magic is in just those activities that you're doing all the time. And the more that you do them repeatedly, it's those small things, they're going to add up. What do you think, Vikram?
If you go to the gym with yourself, you're going to have a certain style, right? And the reason why there's so many injuries and there's so many failures at the gym is because you don't know what you're doing, right? Because if it's easy to walk into something, it's also easy to not walk into. But when you pay somebody to, like I said, I got my MRI back. I've been putting it off for 1.5 years to get an MRI, right? I just kind of worked through the pain. And finally I was like, well, I want to get back on my bike. I need to figure out what's going on. And, I reached out. The first thing I did yesterday was I reached out to my trainer that I used to use who really understands body mechanics. And I'm like, hey, I need to send you all my reports. He's like, oh, you finally got an MRI. And I go, yeah. And I said, I need to send them to you because, I got some stuff that's not working the way it should go. He's like, all right, well, send it over, and when you have the right people to train with, it changes everything. The challenge that our industry faces right now is that we're using, everything stems in our industry from 2 or 3 people. And those people started in 1980, 1990. And they're now at a point where they're so big, they don't need to change certain things. And there's some things they do really well. But when it comes to the language patterns, right, everybody's looking for what you call the silver bullet phrase. If I just say this, everything's going to change. But you don't understand that there's a way to say things. You don't understand that there's a psychology there. You don't understand that the consumer, like I'm sitting here on ChatGPT while we're talking. I'm like, okay, what are the key principles of the science of luck? And I'm like, lucky people create their own opportunities. They talk to more people. Right. So like, I'm literally like, and that's what people that are lucky do.
Yes.
They're always preparing. They're always using tools and technology. Right. But if you go into ChatGPT and you say, hey, write me a script. Well, the problem with ChatGPT is that it has all the information from when? From the entire dawn of the internet. The problem with that is that it's going to go back and say, well, what's the most amount of information? Is it the new training that just came out a couple of years ago? Or is it the stuff that's been around since 1980? Well, go figure. It's the stuff that's been around since 1980.
Right.
So it's going to write you a script based off of what? Based off of the old techniques.
Yeah,
And
you're
then
absolutely right.
So then you go in and you start preparing off of the old techniques, but nobody teaches you about tonality. Nobody teaches you about pattern interrupts. Nobody teaches you about when to pause. Nobody teaches you about, we get 6% mortgage rates. People don't move when there's a 6% mortgage rate unless what? There's a lot of pain, unless there's a lot of thought of future pain. And so if you're not preparing the right way, and what I always tell our clients is like, you guys can go do whatever you want, but if you prepare the wrong way, you're not going to get the results you want. So don't practice with people that are in a different program. And I'm not saying that my program's the best for everybody. My program's good for the people that want to be a part of my program, but don't practice with somebody outside because then you're going to get conflicting messages. And if you're already a little on the unconfident side, guess what happens? You're going to go, oh, well, they're the ones that I should be following. And now you're right back to that point of indecision again. And so you got to stick with something long enough to put roots deep enough before you pivot and change. You got to understand it. You got to put in the work, right? I tell our clients, right? And, Cody hears me every day. If you study our portal, right? We teach you the ultimate appointment booking formula. We teach you a listing presentation of buyer presentation. If you study our portal for 30 minutes a day, right? Even 15 minutes a day for the next 9 months, you'll sell more real estate than 99% of the people in the marketplace. Why? Because you will have competence and confidence. You'll be prepared. You'll understand the prospect in a way that most people never will. You'll get the prospect to tell you things that they've never told anybody about their life. And you go into a listing presentation and you end up becoming their best friend and therapist. They're never leaving. They're referring all their friends to you. And we own a lead generation company. We help people buy leads.
Yep.
Cody, do I sell leads?
No. And like, I think that when we're looking at, the idea of like preparation, and we're looking at the idea of like confidence and all these like things, like where I'm curious about, because obviously like they're like, and I kind of want to pivot here really quickly to kind of talk about like how, because a mortgage lender can be a really great lead source for real estate agents, like, and there's a great opportunity for like JV work. So I'm curious, Nicole, like when you're thinking about preparation, like, because obviously the space so much deeper, like what can a real estate agent do to kind of prepare in order to advise their clients in a way that they can not only impact the lives of their clients, that they understand what's happening in the world of mortgages, but also how can they also prepare in a way that they're not just lucky, but they have the preparation so that they can communicate better with like mortgage agents?
But that's a great question. And, essentially, I always say that's 1 out of every 4 changes in the mortgage industry directly impact a realtor's business. And so if they're not doing this investigatory preparation phase of understanding who their partners are and really, really asking the right questions when they meet partners, it's not just, can you pay for my advertising, right? It's more. It's tell me about the programs and the products. Tell me about how your system is built. Tell me about when I refer clients, what they're going to experience. What's your communication like, right? And so I think, one of the big things for me in this environment is, working with a lender that, the more products you have, the more customers you will serve, especially in this environment where everything's been contracting. And so I think I use the example all the time with agents that I work with. If you refer someone to, let's say, just a retail bank that has 1 product or 2 products, and you're sending them a customer that's buying a $3 million home and they have a 660 credit score, they go to that banker at that retail bank and the retail bank says, I'm sorry, we can't do anything for you because our minimum credit score is a 700. That customer is going to come back to that agent with their head down or tail between their legs and be like, I can't get a mortgage, right? Where here we would say to somebody, well, we can't do it at these 2 lenders, but we could do it at these 3, right? And so just think about something as simple as that, right? That example translates to just about everything. It translates to income conversations, reserves conversations. It translates to the condo buildings and the co-op buildings that sometimes can't get approved elsewhere, but can get approved somewhere else. And so every deal means so much to a realtor. I had a realtor that had a client that was turned down by 2 banks. And because we had this great conversation, this great preparatory conversation about what I do, he told the client, hey, you got to call Nicole. I think she has flexible guidelines. She might be able to do this. Client came to me. She was ready to she had to rent an Airbnb because she was done with her lease where she was renting. So her mom, her son rented Airbnb, not sure they're going to get a loan, declined by 2 lenders. The realtor, because of their preparation, came to me and said, hey, help. And we got that loan closed in like 35 days. I couldn't tell you. The client's review is absolutely amazing. Like she was just so happy when you have those rewarding moments. But I think about the realtor and the client in that situation, like, should he have not prepared? If he didn't, that would have been a deal that he didn't close, a client that he didn't serve. And so that's like one example I can use. And in the speech, we talk about in the science of luck, how there's this Dr. Richard Wiseman, who conducted a 10-year study. It was a groundbreaking study on luck. And what he found was that people who are more lucky have broader social networks and are more open-minded. And so if you always be radically open-minded, but not easily persuaded. And you make sure you keep building your network. Like those are 2 big ways I could say that you can really create this in your life and make sure that you're doing as much preparation as you can.
Like I said at the beginning of this call, Cody and I wouldn't be together. I would have never met Sharon if I wasn't going to live events. I met Sharon in the lobby. It was very funny. It was about 12 years ago. I see another Indian man in a sea of realtors, and we're like the only two brown men in there. And I'm like, oh my God, my friend, what are you doing? And he's like, who the frick is this guy? And I latched on, and I didn't really know who he was. And at that point, he wasn't who he is now, right? But he was still a big deal. He was still the CEO or whatever his title was of a huge company. And they were doing a lot of great things by the time I had met him. I just knew he was a smart guy, and I wanted to latch on. I sat at the front. He would do these like little, power breakouts in his suite at the hotel, and all of his agents were there. And I just pushed my way right up to the front, and I grabbed a seat. Everybody's like, who is this guy? And I'm like, I don't know. Who are you guys? And one thing led to the other, and Sharon would call us in the morning, because every morning we role played, right? Just like in my current team now, like Cody knows, on my calendar, 5 days a week is an opportunity for our sales team to come and role play, ask questions, and get their skills improved.
Mm-hmm.
The more people you hang out with, the faster you accelerate, right? And it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know that's going to get you to where you want to go.
Right.
Right. And so when I think about preparation, I think about your social network, right? The other thing I think about is a lot of people say you can never fail if you keep going. Well, that's not true. If you keep doing the same thing, that is failing, because you're not learning from the failure. The only way you learn from failure is you stop, you analyze, you then learn from what you did, and you become better, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is what most entrepreneurs, most salespeople, most realtors, most loan officers. I was in real estate I sold $250 million of real estate. I talked to a lot of LOs. I talked to a lot of realtors. Same mistake every day. That, into my opinion, is failure. But when you stop, right, and the way that, sales consciousness talks about going from power to courage, when you stop and you look, like Cody took all of my scripting and he put it into a GPT. Now we need to update the GPT, which we talked about earlier, but I took his model, put in the transcript from our team member, put in the updated scripting, and he got a 41 out of 85. You know what the funny thing is? If I show you the Slack message he sent me, he's like, bro, I fucking crushed that call. I killed it. It was stellar. And GPT says exactly what I know it's going to say. You didn't open up any pain. You didn't loop back. And I already know it's going to be a 40, 30, 20%. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because patterns don't get better unless you make them better.
Absolutely.
So patterns repeat. And so people need to reframe failure with learning, right? If you go into a listing presentation and you didn't win the listing presentation, but you pull up, you go to the park,
Mm-hmm.
you pull out, you put your feet in the ground, right? You take your shoes off, you ground yourself, right? Pull out a journal and you're like, all right, what did I miss? Now you're actually not a failure. But if you go and you do the same presentation again to a different person and you expect a different result, that to me is failure, because you're not trying to get better. You're not looking at ways to improve your scenario.
Right.
And so when you get lucky, no, you didn't get lucky, but you did get lucky, but you put in the work. And that's why AKA Nicole's all of a sudden crushing it on social. She's crushing it on her podcast. Why? Well, because she got lucky, because she reviewed her stuff for so many months and years, and she never stopped.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally fundamentally completely believe in everything you just said. I think it's so important. Why are we doing this every day? Whatever it is that we do for a living. I mean, it's because we want to be the best at it. We want to get the results out of it. And so you have to, I always think about like this analogy when it comes to like being around people. When you go to the gym and you're on the treadmill and you're like walking, but someone next to you is like sprinting, all of a sudden you're like you want to start running too. Yeah. You see it. You're like, before you know it, you're running because the person next to you is. So like environment and the types of people that you're surrounding yourself with is so important. Yeah. That's kind of like the opportunity side of this, right? When you think about the equation. So you're doing all the preparation so that when you're in environments like that, like when I'm on the treadmill and someone next to me starts running, like at least I can run, right? And so when you go to those events, like where you guys met, you feel prepared enough to strike a conversation with Cody or Vikram, right? Or whoever it is that you meet, because you're prepared about what you do and how to have these networking discussions and how to get comfortable with it. And look, everybody has a little bit of nerves and whatever it is, the first time you do it, first time you go to a Tony Robbins event or a networking event and you interject in the middle of a conversation, but ultimately like that's the opportunity side of everything. And so you want to put yourself in those environments where you're going to be around people who are going to pull you up. And I totally get what you're saying in regards to failure. It's like, psychologically, it's like you haven't failed unless you quit, right? That's really what true failure is like. You're quitting. But every other failure that you experience is just data. And so I just did a podcast on exactly this. It's like, how do we embrace failure? How do we celebrate it? A lot of people have been in sales a long time. They'll say to me, like, I was managing 53 people at my prior organization. We did $2.1 billion in business. Today I work in 1 year. Today I work with a $2 billion group, one of the number one teams within cross country. And like, I got to tell you, like, it's interesting. Sometimes I'll see people tell me like, well, I don't want to make cold calls. Well, nobody wants to make cold calls. It's not necessarily fun. But like, if you just rely on like whoever it is that you meet and only that, well, then I hope you're doing a lot of networking, because that alone isn't going to lead to it. Like, right. We didn't network and meet each other. This was cold, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think someone from my team may have reached out to you, vice versa. These relationships online networking online is a thing today, right? And just introducing yourself and trying to connect that way. So I think like, you have to embrace cold calling. And if I want to meet Vikram and I don't know him, well, I have to be comfortable picking up the phone and calling him. And the only way I'm going to get comfortable doing that is by practicing. What does my value proposition sound like? How do I get his attention? I know he's busy. I want to do my research on him. I want to congratulate him for the success of his show. Maybe I want to call out an episode that really stood out to me. And then I want to tell him, hey, I know you're busy, but the reason for my call today is 1, 2, 3, right? Here are the benefits to you. Here's why you should listen. Can we get 20 minutes on the calendar next week, right? If Vikram says no to me, like I can't, that's not about me, right? It's just, maybe there's something I could have done differently. Rinse and repeat and keep going. And you need to embrace that.
Maybe Vikram's just having a bad day, you guys.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Maybe I'm just like, I woke up, I didn't sleep last night, which is true. Like I couldn't fall asleep till 1:45 on my Whoop. And maybe like, I'm just grumpy because I'm sick and you call me, you're like, can I get 20 minutes? And like,
right. Yeah. Maybe his hip hurts. He's got a hip problem, it's not my fault.
Feeling 43 and 90 at the same time. And I'm like pissed off that everybody takes things so personally, but nothing's personal. How could somebody dislike Cody or Nicole or me? Well, me is probably easier, but I like to polarize the population. How could somebody dislike somebody that they only met for 15 seconds on a phone call? How can somebody dislike somebody that they've never sat down and had a dinner with or a coffee with?
Right.
How can you do that? Like the world is so quick to dismiss. And the reason why, in my opinion, is because it's so much easier to dismiss people and dismiss a whole group of people, right? Oh, nobody wants to talk to me. Did you try calling 100 people and have 1,000 conversations? No. So then you don't know that everybody hates you. You're just making that as an excuse because you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's a great book called The 4 Agreements. I don't know if you guys ever read it.
Book.
Yeah, it's great.
But that's exactly like, if you could just live your life, like never taking anything personal, never making assumptions, staying impeccable with your word. You think about your calendar, when you want to wake up, when you want to go to the gym, and like just doing your best. Those 4 things, like I always think about, because we tend to sometimes take things personal. I think it's human nature to some extent. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think the next step too, like if Vikram was like, yeah, I'm busy right now. I'm sorry, I can't talk. I got to go. Well, then it's like, am I going to follow up with him after that? Am I going to really take that bold action, right? Or like, hey, Vikram, I know the last time I called you, you were really busy, but I wanted to touch base with you again. I mean, everybody talks about the statistic of sales happening on the 5th to 12th call. Vikram's busy. He's got a million things on his calendar other than.
Do I need to call you 7 more times, or do you want to just talk now? Right?
Yeah.
Like, all right. What do you fucking want?
Let's just get it out of the way.
Use humor. Like, use humor in your life. Be funny. Use crack jokes, right? Throw things out there at the wall and see what sticks. If your formal approach doesn't work anymore, I mean, I see the guy called the Tatted Realtor. He sold like $50 million last year. He made 7 figures and his whole face is tatted up. Who would have thought 20 years ago that guy would even make 1 sale? Now he's one of the top influencers on the marketplace. Why?
Yeah.
Because he's showing up authentically himself.
Nicole, if somebody were to want to reach out to you, they want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, whether your course, whether it's joining your team, where's the best place we can send them?
Thank you. Yeah. At $1 Billion Banker is my handle on everything. Instagram's probably the most active. I would love for you guys to reach out to us there. Again, I'm, with Cross Country Mortgage, one of the leaders there, always looking for amazing bankers, always looking for great realtors to work with and collaborate with. And just so excited to be here with you guys today. Thanks for having me. I love your show. And I hope to see you guys again soon.
We will see you soon. I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the Our Agent Podcast. We'll see you soon.